Is it true that a wizard doesn't actually need a wand to cast a spell? How exactly does a Patronus charm work? And could the Time Turner have saved Harry's parents? Hi, I'm Clive, and you're watching OSSA Movies. All the laws of Transfiguration. If you want to find the most scientific thing in the wizarding world, this is it. It's a very specific discipline that requires firm wand movements because otherwise it just won't work. And it's also very hard. The easiest thing is to transform an item into something else that's similar in size and shape. For example, it's not that hard to turn a small statue of a dragon into an actual dragon. But it's much harder to conjure something huge or transform an object into a completely different one.
Roberto.
And of course, there are multiple limitations to the laws of transformation. The so-called Gam's Law of Elemental Transfiguration, for example, explains a few things about the Harry Potter series. And if you're a foodie, it might upset you. It dictates that you can't conjure food. Yep, that's why Harry, Ron, and Hermione nearly starved while hunting for Horcruxes. On the other hand, the law allows enlarging already existing food, multiplying it, or summoning it from somewhere else, like the food in Hogwarts that was just summoned from the kitchen to the Great Hall. Other things that can't be conjured are money and shelter, clothes, body parts removed by dark magic, and heat or cold. Explains a lot of things, right? Now, let's move on to another subject taught at Hogwarts. Potions. Magic or just chemistry? Well, it's kind of both. Most of the ingredients have magical properties, and the potions themselves have supernatural powers, like a Polyjuice potion that turns you into someone else, or Felix Felicis that gives you exceptional luck. But at the same time, it's essential not only to know how to make a potion using the available ingredients, but also to be a wizard. I mean, you can't just throw a Bezoar stone into your cauldron, sprinkle it with powdered snake fang, and pour a bit of Lethe River water over it, and think that you'll have some magical potion. Nope, you'll have the most disgusting stew you've ever made, especially if you're a muggle. And it will probably be poisonous. A potion has to be brewed by a wizard because passive magic power is needed to combine the ingredients and melt them together. Only then will the reaction occur, and the potion will work. So, as you see, it's a combination of magic and chemistry, and one can't do without another. I put a spell on you. This part of magical science is quite delicate. Even the way you hold your wand and utter the spell determines whether it's going to work or not. It was clearly shown in the very first film. Remember how Hermione tutored Ron?
You're saying it wrong. It's Leviosa, not Leviosa.
Yes, that whole swish and flick business is crucial. Another thing about spells that you probably want to know is why they sound the way they do. Most of them are based in Latin, and they usually mean a simple call to do something. Like, for example, lumos is light in Latin, and as you know, this spell creates a light at the tip of the wand. And it's also interesting that spells work as a combination of the wizard's physical focus, the wand, and mental focus, the incantation. This is proved by how Lupin taught Harry to concentrate on his happy memory to cast a Patronus spell. And remember how, in the Goblet of Fire, Barty Crouch, disguised as Moody, told the students that if they all cast the Avada Kedavra spell on him, he'd barely get a scratch because they wouldn't have the intention to really kill. But however powerful or minor spells are, they all come from somewhere. Which begs the question, how do you create your own spell? We only know a few wizards from the Harry Potter canon who could do it. One of them was Snape, and the spell he invented could easily join the ranks of unforgivable curses.
You dare use my own spells against me, Potter.
And we also heard Luna's story about her mother who accidentally killed herself while experimenting with her spell. The exact mechanism of creating a charm is unknown, but it's clear that it's a challenging and dangerous process. Only wizards and witches with extraordinary magical skills can do it. And now, let's see what else we know about spells. Do wizards really need wands? Basically, to cast a spell, you have to point your wand at an object and utter the incantation. More experienced wizards can do it without uttering the incantation aloud. Students in Hogwarts usually learn to do that in their 5th year. But did you know that even more experienced people in the wizarding world can actually do a spell without a wand? Let's see how. Well, first of all, it often happens to underage wizards. Like, remember how Harry made the glass window disappear to free the snake and trap Dudley inside the cage? Or how he inflated his Aunt Marge? He did both without a wand. Besides that, this kind of magic is also available to truly powerful wizards. For instance, Dumbledore prevented Harry from falling to his death in The Prisoner of Azkaban. Voldemort moved the giant's body away from his path at the end of the Deathly Hallows Part 2 by simply waving his hand. And of course, we know that magical creatures such as house elves and goblins never needed a wand to make magic. Now you're probably wondering how wands were actually created. The history of the wizarding world says that it's a European invention, while wizards in some other cultures, such as Native Americans and Africans, never used them in the past. But it makes sense that eventually most of them adopted the use of a wand because it made channeling magical energy so much easier. How exactly does a Patronus charm work? Well, first of all, it's a highly complex spell, and even some advanced wizards have problems with it. It's safe to assume, for example, that Voldemort couldn't cast one because how on earth could he summon a happy memory? A Patronus works as a shield against Dementors. It represents the very things that those dark creatures feed upon, hope and happiness. But it can't feel negative emotions, so a Dementor can't harm it. A Patronus can come in two different forms: non-corporeal, where it's just a cloud of smoke or vapor, and it can be corporeal, taking the shape of something distinct, usually an animal. Typically, it's the wizard's favorite animal and one that lives in his area. Here's what the great 18th century researcher of charms, Professor Catullus Spangles, said about it. The Patronus is the awakened secret self that lies dormant until needed, but which must now be brought to light. In other words, the shape of the Patronus somehow represents the wizard's character, and it can also be his or her spirit animal. Aren't you wondering how yours would look? Because I am. A Patronus is unique to every wizard or witch, but sometimes it can change due to a significant event. For example, when Tonks fell in love with Lupin, her Patronus became a wolf, the same animal he had. And did you know that a Patronus can also be used as a messenger between wizards? Snape, for example, cast his to guide Harry to the Sword of Gryffindor. But of course, the primary function of a Patronus is to guard against Dementors, which leads us to the next question. Can Dementors be killed? Well, the answer is no, they can't. The thing is, they're immortal. Not immortal, meaning that they live forever, but amortal, unable to die because they aren't alive to begin with, and they have never been born. But still, there's a way to keep them inert, but a Patronus won't help with that. Avada Kedavra won't work for obvious reasons. They're not alive, remember? So what can you do? To make Dementors inactive, it's necessary to stop creating the conditions in which they thrive. Since they multiply in decay, despair, and degradation, it means that growing an atmosphere of joy, peace, and hope may limit their numbers. However, it's impossible to get rid of Dementors forever. They have always been, so they will always remain in existence. Scary, right? But that's how the laws of the wizarding world work. Now, to brush off the feeling of Dementors being everywhere around, let's move on. Could a time turner be used to save Harry's parents? Before answering this question, let's see how this device works. Well, it's pretty easy. It resembles an hourglass on a necklace. The number of times you turn it corresponds to the number of hours you go back in time. And it's impossible to stay in the past for longer than 5 hours at a time. But using it to save Lily and James Potter wouldn't have been a wise thing to do anyway. Even if it was possible to get there, changing this event could lead to a time paradox and the creation of an alternative timeline where God knows what would happen. Let's take the Cursed Child as an example. In this book, Harry's and Draco's sons go back in time to save Cedric Diggory, and spoiler alert, he becomes a Death Eater. And it launches a series of events, creating an alternative timeline where Voldemort wins. So it's better not to mess with time. The way Harry and Hermione used the time turner to save Sirius and Buckbeak was different. It was quite a trivial task, so it didn't create a paradox. Besides, the very way Harry and Hermione traveled into the past produced the circumstances they had noted before doing it. Remember Hermione throwing stones in Hagrid's window and Harry casting a Patronus to save himself and Sirius from Dementors? They were supposed to do it. If you like this video, watch any other one we've made about the Harry Potter series. They're all awesome!